أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله وتلك الأمثال نضربها للناس لعلهم يتفكرون. صدق الله مولانا العظيم وبلغنا رسوله النبي الكريم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وبارك وسلم وصل عليه. My respected friends and young people as well here, mashallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The majesty, the grandeur and the greatness of the Qur'an. How do you measure it? How do you understand it? Here is a metaphor the Quran uses. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا متصدعا من خشية الله. Were we to reveal the Quran on the mountains, they would become humble. They would then turn into dust out of the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we give examples like this so that people may reflect and ponder over them. So the metaphor the Quran uses here is of the mountains. If this Quran was to be revealed, if it was revealed on the mountains, what does that mean? If the mountains had the aql, if the mountains were like human beings, like the Prophet, able to receive. And the mountain, of course, is what? The metaphor really is this one. What is the relationship and comparison of you with a mountain? It's like a speck of dust, isn't it? A grain of sand in the desert. And when you look at Himalayas, for the Mount Everest, for example, or Mount Snowdon or Kilimanjaro. Is there a mountain around here? Is there any famous site or a mountain around Bolton? Winter Hill. Can you see it from somewhere? Yes, okay, you can. All right, you can see it from. Okay, but just imagine these great big mountains and. Of course, most of you will have been to Mount Hira and Mount Sor, and even though they are not they're only 300 meters, okay? Not very tall at all, but still, when you compare yourself with them, you look tiny, don't you? There's no comparison. This is a speck of dust and that. So the metaphor is about that actually. Okay, look, something that is so big and grand and vast, even that cannot and does not have, okay, the capacity to handle the weight of this book. Okay, this is how weighty he is. You say his words are weighty. We use that, and the Quran uses that. Qawlan thaqila. The qawlan thaqila. It's a weighty speech. Okay, it's a weighty speech. The Quran, yeah, no. So it's about that weightiness of the Quran. Okay. But what that means is the facts in it, the reality that it contains, is so mighty that even the mountains, if they were so vast and big, if they can't handle it, what about human beings? No? So it's just, and then what will it do? It says khashi'an. It would become khashi'an, just like قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ فِي صَلَاتِهِمْ خَاشِعُونَ. The same word khashi'un, khashi'an means actually humble. But when you say you are humble, really here it's more to do with being focused, attentive, and really appreciating and valuing it. I'm trying to unpack the word khashi'an. Sheikh Professor Muhammad, unpacking that word and the idea of humbleness, okay? So this is why, we need to learn this vocabulary of moral words, spiritual words, social words, because they really are, really very concentrated packages, well packed, and they need to be unwrapped and understood. And this is what some of our wonderful tafasir do, actually. That is precisely what a lot of the tafasir do. They unpack the words, okay? So, khashi'an, they are focused, humbled by it, but then mutasaddi'an min khashyatillah, out of the fear of their Lord, okay? So the fear of Allah is really important. And then really to make us have some sense of the fear of Allah and the mightiness and the greatness of Allah. In the next 4 verses, how many qualities of Allah mentioned? 18. How many? 18. Who is this God that we're talking about? Well, he's Huwallahu alladhi la ilaha illahu alimul ghaybi wash shahada huwa ar-rahmanur rahim. Huwallahu alladhi la ilaha illahu al-malik al-quddus as-salam al-mu'min al-muhaymin al-aziz al-jabbar al-mutakabbir. Just to show where is this khashya coming, or khashiyah coming, this fear, okay? It's coming from this, because they understand how mighty, how wonderful, how powerful, how loving, caring, how forgiving, and how absolutely, in command he is. Okay, he's in complete control and command of everything, and the guardian of all of the creation. So I hope you can see, when we look at the Quran, we need to realize that it is from the unique, the master of the universe, and therefore it's going to be something very special. It's not like any other book, okay? So that's the first thing I think we really do need to have in our heads and minds. And perhaps, sometimes we do understand that, but we understand it that now it is so great and sacred and holy. Therefore, let's wrap it up in the ghalaf and put it right high up somewhere where our backs won't be towards it, and we don't have to get it down either. And so that is the problem. Do you see? We've taken it to another level, and that's not the point. The point is it should be always on your desk here. Okay, it should be on your coffee table. Okay, you should be always engaged with it. Do you see how we've taken that holiness and the sacredness to a level where really it's absurd? That is not the whole point. You should always be keeping it close to your heart, in your pocket, and everywhere where you can refer to it. And perhaps this is why good parents get their children to become hafiz. So the hafiz is now the master. But let me take you the idea of the hafiz to another level. Who's a hafiz here? And we've got a hafiz of Quran here. Okay. Okay, then. Okay, so the hafiz of Quran, mashallah. So hafiz of Quran knows the words of the Quran. But what a sad thing that if you were to ask him to translate one verse, he would just put his head down in shame and say, "I'm sorry, I don't know." I hope something's gone wrong, hasn't it? I hope you can see what's gone wrong with the Quran, or with the Muslims, with their relationship with the Quran. They can spend. I have mashallah 4 hifz classes with nearly 100 children we have in our 7 Quran schools, and we've got about 30 odd young people who've done hifz over the years, and on average, they've spent about 3,000 to 4,000 hours to memorize the Quran. 3,000 to 4,000. Okay, and you've heard this formula about 10,000 hours. If you do something for 10,000 hours, you've not heard that formula. Oh, well, this is a well-known formula, actually. If you do something for 10,000 hours, what are you going to be in it? You're going to be a master of it. You're going to be an expert in it, seriously. And so to become a hafiz, you spend about 3,000 to 4,000 hours, okay? But over the years, they will have spent tens of thousands of hours on it. But what I'm saying to you is they never moved to the next stage where, they learn the meanings. So some of the great scholars back about 200 years ago in India did something wonderful. And can I have a Majestic Qur'an, please, if you've got a copy there? And what they did was to help these young Hufaz who used to come to them to become alim. Jazakallah khair. They used to become alim, you had to be a hafiz. You could not come into a seminary in the past. Even now in Al-Azhar, you can't get into Al-Azhar if you're not a hafiz of Qur'an. They've become a bit accommodating for foreigners. They say you have to be hafiz of 8 juz at least. Okay. When we joined, actually, in 91, they had just changed the rule. But I was a hafiz, so I had no problems. But they had just changed the rule that for non-Arabs, we would allow them if they just knew 8 juz. They would. But the Arabs, that is Egyptians, the Syrians who used to come, or from anywhere Arab world, if they were not hafiz, they would not be admitted into Al-Azhar. So it was a normal practice that you had to be a hafiz to become an alim. Okay. So when these young hufaz who finished their Quran hifz, 10, 12-year-olds, or even younger than that, they came to these teachers and they found that, they don't understand a word of. So they would obviously start teaching them the language of Arabic. But at the same time, what they did was, just to make it easy for them, they did thematic division of the Quran. So what I've done is actually nothing new. I've just copied what these wonderful shuyukh did. So, if you look at Surah Al-Baqarah, for example, Alif Lam Mim, Dhalik, these wonderful Arabs don't have this gift that we have here. Seriously. So Sheikh Muhammad wanted to know about these rukus, because they were not, and it never spread to the Arab world. This is why, these Musharrafs printed in Saudi Arabia or in Egypt or on Morocco, they don't have these ruku markings. But so these wonderful shuyukh and teachers, just to help their students, Sheikh, what they did was, so they divided each surah into themes. So Alif Lam Mim to Adhabun Azim is one particular theme, the definition of a believer. And that's what it is. You look at it. It's all a definition of the. And then from وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ to يَا أَيُّهَا النَّاسُ اعْبُدُوا. 13 ayahs, all about hypocrites. The hypocrites are cheat, the hypocrites are fraud, the hypocrites are troublemakers, and all those. I've actually divided this into further 5 sections, subsections. Living in an age when our attention span is so short, and we're, we like bite sizes. So I've made it bite sized rather than keeping the whole ruku. But I use that ruku as what's teaching me to make it thematic. I hope you can see your. Do you have them?
Realize that it is, in fact, there is a groundbreaking approach, which is thematic approach. Yes.
Jazakallah.
Definitely.
Thank you very much. But so I hope you see even our Arab brothers need the Indians to help them to understand the Quran. So this was, but I hope you can see. So then from Ya Ayyuhan Nas U'budu to Wa idh qala rabbuka lil malaika, that's another ruku. These. And that is all about, now you know what a true believer is, you know what a hypocrite is, the one with a mask on it, the one who pretends, the one who acts, and you shouldn't be that. You should be the first one. You now need to worship the Lord, and as a consequence, you will be given the Jannah. So that's all about that. And then, just to knock sense into us, who are you really? Okay, وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً to Ya Bani Israel is all about the creation of the Khalifa, Adam alayhi salam. Isn't that? It's just about that. And then from Ya Bani Israel to next Ya Bani Israel is all about an introduction to the Jews and their problem, their serious problem. So I hope you can see how, the Quran is, teaching us that, look, this is for muttaqeen. We want you to become a muttaqi, okay? We don't want you to be these hypocrites. And, hypocrites and hypocrisy is a very serious illness. psychological, religious, and spiritual illness. Very serious one. It's actually human illness as well. And anybody who's a hypocrite in his profession, do you think he's going to survive and succeed? That's actually, he ends up being a fraudulent person, a swindler. Seriously, in his own, and we know that in every profession, whether it is medicine or dentistry or teaching or any profession, there are those, aren't there? Those are the hypocrites. They are the hypocrites. And same in the deen, the hypocrites. So Allah tells us not to go down that lane. And this is, can you follow? There's a clear sort of linkage, because people normally say, the Quran is just wandering around everywhere. It doesn't seem to have a concerted and a particular direction. Of course, it's got a very clear direction. So why does it not talk about the Jews? From Ya Bani Israel adhkuru to Sayaqulu Sufaha, this is nearly 14 rukus, 3/4 of a juz. 3/4 is all about the Jews. Different portions and different parts of their history are taught. Different incidences in the life of Musa alayhi salam and what they did right and what they also did wrong. A lot of it is wrong. There's a lot of disobedience. Okay, so this becomes the history of disobedience. Okay, so as though the Quran is saying to the Muslims, don't be like that, and giving them a practical example. Okay, so the point I wanted to really show you that the thematic way of looking at the Quran isn't something new. These wonderful ulama back 200 years ago, but they were very cautious. Did you see how cautious they were, Dr. Amjad? What they did? They didn't do anything to the text of the Quran. In the margin, they just wrote little ain. They just wrote a little ayn, and inside it they would write the verses in that ruku and what number of ruku it is in the juz and what number of ruku it is in the surah on the top. This is how cautious and thoughtful they were. But sadly, we never developed that when we started translating it. Okay, and it got the translations were even done in a more unnatural way. But so I'm talking here. I want to talk about the ring structure of the surahs. Why is this? Why do you need to know this? As I said yesterday, in your primary school here, the English teacher tells you how to write essays. Okay, and she would say, you always write a clear title. You do a small introduction about what you are going to talk about and what's the purpose of this, who is it about, and then you have the main body, and then you come to some kind of conclusion. That is how we write. This is called a linear or Aristotelian way of writing essays. Okay, that's normal. We're used to that, aren't we? Some of us who went to school for 15 years, some of us went for 18 years if we did a degree. This is how we've been expected to do and write. So it's natural that we look for the same pattern in the Quran, and and when we don't find it, we get puzzled, bewildered, and of course we give up very quickly. All right, and so some people have been doing research on the Bible, particularly Mary Douglas. Dr. Mary Douglas, she did a lot of work on biblical books and some of the ancient writings, and what she came up with was known as the ring structure. So the main theme, the main subject would be in the middle, okay? And then whatever the book starts with, it also finishes with that same topic. Then the second topic becomes the penultimate. The third here, C, becomes C prime towards the end, and D, and then D prime on this side. So it breaks up the whole story in that way. And some people did some work on the Quran. Professor Raymond Ferrins, who's a professor in Islamic Studies in Kuwait University, he did a PhD actually on this and the Quran. And through that, actually, he became a Muslim, mashallah, when he discovered this whole thing. And he's done some work on it more to, just to elaborate on this ring structure. But this ring structure isn't something which is just been recently found. I've been able to see it in those of you, Sheikh, if you read Mafatih al-Ghaib of Imam Fakhruddin Razi, his wonderful 13-volume tafsir, he often talks about, he says, you see how the surah ends with the same topic that it began with. Ibn Qayyim talks about it. I've got some quotes here. So they were already familiar, these wonderful ulama were already familiar with this idea that what the Quran surah begins with always, it ends with. So there was that notion already. So it's nothing new or odd, yeah, no? But why do we need it? Why do you because you know, let's be honest, you say, I want to just understand the message that Allah is giving me so that I can live according to the will of my Lord. Isn't that right? Yes. So how is that going to help you? I think it will help you once you understand this structure. You will become familiar. You will become confident. You will become? Yes. Which sort of students succeed in a school? Yeah, it's the confident in any subject. You know, when you become a confident in any subject, you're going to fly. You're going to come out with flying colors. Isn't that right? It's when you don't have confidence, you know, I can't do it. Maths is very hard for me. I just can't do maths. And you keep on saying that to yourself. What happens? You get worse and worse at it. Eh? It's only when you say, I can do it. And then that's where a good teacher, of course, gives the confidence, boosts the confidence, and actually, you know, really builds that confidence in the student. No, you can do it. You can do it, and keeps on adding, you know, through scaffolding, through different means, yeah, no, he actually strengthens that confidence. I feel, you know, we've lost that confidence in the Quran, most of us, you know, because of the way the Quran's translations have been presented. Not how the translations were done. Most translations are really accurate and good translations. You know, people like Pickthall were actually of the opinion that you can never translate the Quran, okay? Which all of the ulama have that notion, which is true. You know, in its essence, it's true, but in other ways, it's not right to adopt that attitude. Of course, you cannot. What's in the Arabic and what is the real Quran? Okay, ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ هُدًى لِلْمُتَّقِينَ. That essence and that you can never, you know, put into another language, no matter how master of that language you are, because that is the Quran. You know, Allah says, "Inna anzalnahu," we will reveal this in Arabic. Okay, we reveal this Arabic Quran. So the Quran is Arabic. The Quran is, no doubt about it. Whatever else is actually a translation, and translation, you know, by definition, is actually changing from one form to another, from the Arabic form, the form, and then there is the essence, the spirit of it as well, isn't it? Do you see that? So the Arabic words and their spirit and their message and what they stand for, they're symbols after all, aren't they? You cannot fully and wholesome put into English. But what I can do, and this is where all the Mufassirin have been working on, and all the scholars of Quran have been doing, is, come on, we need to understand the divine mind. We can do it. We can, to best of our abilities, all right? And everybody will have a different ability. So that is what we are trying to do. Is everybody with me on that? Okay, so when we say that, what we have done is, what we have is meanings of the Quran, okay, in a way that we understand, and the way the translator has understood. But let me be honest, you know, my understanding of the Quran is entirely based on the ulama of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jamaat and the commentators, and I had no choice. Okay, I couldn't, you know, a Shia friend, you know, a translator, what is he going to use? It's obvious. He's going to use Shia tafasir and Shia way of looking at it. Isn't that right? Yes. So that's natural and that's normal. So we're not really, you know, we don't need to argue about that. So coming back to this building of confidence and familiarity with the Quran, we need to know how it's constructed. Okay, so that's why it's so important to understand that, this idea of rukus. So those of you, who have got, anyway, we've included rukus here as well. So the rukus will give you a more general theme, actually. And what I've done is split it up further into 4 or 5 minor themes. So the major theme in bold would be the hypocrites, okay? And then the minor, they are troublemakers, they're liars, they're confused and disoriented. Those would be the minor themes within it. Is that okay, everybody? I'm trying to explain to you the structure. It's really important to know the structure of a book. When you read it, the best thing to do is to try to understand that. So the ring structure. So how does this work? So let's have a look at that, okay? So, this is how our textbooks, and this is how we always are used to. Everybody familiar with that structure? The Quran actually does use this in some of the shorter surahs. You can actually make it linear. It does actually do that as well. But there's always, again, it sort of curls back as well. You might be able to discern that. But particularly the shorter surahs from Amma Yatsa'alun, you might see this sort of linear almost structure as well in it. Okay? So try to look for that as well. You would find it. I'll tell you, the Quran is a living book. It will open up to you. If this is the way you want to read it and understand it, it will come to you that way. Seriously. It will speak to you and it will open to you. But you need to know what you're doing, all right? Okay, and remember, no alim can say to you, you can't understand the Quran. And if he does, say to them, Allama Sahib, thank you for your advice, but I'm not taking it because Allah is telling me, وَلَقَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِلذِّكْرِ. Allah has we've made the Quran easy for understanding. But you know what it says at the end? فَهَلْ مِن مُدَّكِرٍ. Is there anybody who's actually going to pay attention? Already challenging you. Are you paying attention to it? Okay. So, when you read any surah, do please always reflect. And I advise you to start from the 28th juz, because those are shorter surahs which you could read translation in less than 10 minutes easily. And then you can get this bird's eye view, or a helicopter view as they sometimes want to use. You can really get the whole view of it, and you can see how it flows. And you will now see, subhanallah, each surah has got it's got a particular, there's a theme. There was a reason why it was revealed, okay? There was a context to it. And yes, I can see this now. That will really strengthen your confidence. And we need to build that confidence, before you can succeed, as a successful student. Okay. So this is a ring composition. Okay, I mean, most of the old books are actually written in that way. Masnavi of Rumi. Anybody who reads Rumi? Anybody here got even translate? I don't know much Farsi, but I read it in English. Some wonderful. Arbery's short version of Masnavi is a very good one. But Javed, who from Oxford Press, has done a wonderful translation of Masnavi. It really is worth reading. And if you read Masnavi, Rumi's Masnavi, he uses exactly the same ring structure. Okay, and this is why he wanders off in wild and wonderful ways from left, right, center, all because he's using this ring structure in Muslim. So it's a well-established technique of writing books in the past. So it's not odd, it's not weird. Okay, so and that's very important. People should have that pride in the Quran. Okay, it has a systematic way of doing things. I'm going to share this with you. This is really interesting. Ayatul Kursi is a famous verse, and you all know it, mashallah. It's a long verse, and it's got how many parts? Can anybody see how many parts it's got there? Jim is the end of a part. Add 2 more to it. Okay, it's got 9 parts, all right? Okay, let's see how there's a circle to it. Oh, let's go back. MashaAllah. Allahu la ilaha illa huwal Hayyul Qayyum. Okay, so it begins with Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-Hayyul Qayyum. Huwa al-Hayyul Qayyum. And what's right at the end? What's right at the end? Huwa al-Aliyyul Azim. Okay. I've actually, there is no God but Allah. It's missed out the, I should have written, what's missing from there? Yes, Al-Hayyul Qayyum is missing there. So there is no God but Allah, the living, the eternal, the self-sufficient, the supporting of others. And He is exalted, the majestic. You could have put His Aliyul Azim there, couldn't you? But 4 would be just too many in one, so they've been put there. And then the next one is La ta'khuzuhu sinatun wala nawm. And He never gets tired. Okay. Right at the end is what? Allahu ma fi samawati man zal ladhi yashfa'u wala yuhituna bi shay'in illa bima sha'a wasi'a kursiyyuhu samawati wala ya'uduhu hifzuhuma wala. He never gets tired of protecting them. That should be really neither tiredness nor sleep overwhelm Him, neither does He get tired of protecting them. That could have come there as well. It's the same, but it's not quite there, no? What's next, yeah, no? All that is in the heavens and the earth belongs to Him. And wasi'a kursiyyuhu as-samawati wal ard. Isn't that related to it? Okay. And man zal ladhi yashfa'u indahu illa bi'izni. And then, why? Because they don't really know the full facts of anything. That is why they cannot do the, shafa'at. Although Allah will allow His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Anbiya, and of course the really close muqarrabeen to do the shafa'at, because they will have it, but not everybody will have that. Okay. Am I sort of stretching this too much, or is it? Do you see the real relationship between those, those colored ones? So the red one at the top and the red at the bottom. Is there direct correspondence or not?
Yes, there is.
Between each one of them, isn't there? What's in the right in the center? يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. What is the normal translation of that? Normally it's translated as He knows what's in front of them and what's behind them. I think that's the translation. Yeah. But that's actually, Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu says, that is really not what it means. Okay, what it means is what you've achieved and what you've failed to achieve, what you've sent forth for your real home, and what you've failed to do here. That's Abdullah ibn Abbas translation. I've not actually made that up, but I've got to be idiomatic. If I was to write that, this is the meaning, that He knows what's in front of you and what's behind you, you'll be wondering, won't you? He knows what's in front of me is a table and behind me is the mihrab. Is that what it's about? No, it's not about that. It's about what you've achieved and what you've not achieved, what you've achieved and what you've failed to do. Sheikh? Do you see, that's why it's so important not to be too literal. If you're too literal, then you're going to be confused. Okay? Okay. So, but can you see that as being the center of this? Is that the center, do you think? What is the Quran trying to do to you? It's saying, what are you sending forth, isn't it? The same thing is repeated in Surah Yasin. What are you doing for your future? The everlasting future. And what are you failing to achieve? That's more important. So I hope you even hear in Ayatul Kursi, the verse of the throne, you can see that circle and that ring structure. Is that okay, everybody? Try it with some of the other big verses, yourself. You will see this. But sometimes you might not see it. It might be just linear. Okay? So, but in many cases you will be able to see that. So when you find that, why is the Quran wandering from this to that? There might be this structure, which is there to look for. All right? There you are. Wonderful wedding ring. Okay, those of you who are aspiring to get married, will want a diamond ring for your, inshallah, for your wives. So you've got A and A prime, B and B prime. Okay, you can actually do this even with long surahs like Surah Baqarah. To be honest, it's amazing how even surahs like Surah Baqarah have that. It's just amazing how there are 286 verses in Surah Al-Baqarah, and what's the middle verse of it? وَجَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لِتَقُومُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. We made you the middle nation, right in the middle. Okay, verse 143. That's what it is. Okay, so what's our conclusion? So could the Prophet ﷺ sat there and say, I'm going to make a ring structure of this now? He would sit with Abu Bakr Siddiq and Ali radiallahu anhum and say, let's now make a ring structure of this. Subhanallah. Okay? The sophisticated ring structure, And it was, Surah Baqarah was revealed not in 9 days, but 9. So how would you put it together in such a way? And yet it still is, it's got this wonderful structure that flows. فَاعْتَبِرُوا يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. Okay? Oh, intelligent people, there's a lesson for you to learn, in this. So let's just, inshallah, go to one of the surahs and actually see it. So I want you to, those who've got the Quran in front of them, we can turn to Surah Al-Qaf. I know the Sheikh loves this surah, and I can see why, because it's one of the great surahs that compares two of our challenges. The challenge of materialism and how we deal with that. Okay, so Surah Al-Qaf, please, if you can open that. Let's just go through Surah Al-Qaf and look at this ring structure in Surah Al-Qaf and its themes as well, and how thematically it's related. Okay, so do please, if you've got, share it with, if you've got it in Surah Al-Qaf is Surah number, it's Surah 18. Okay, Surah Al-Qaf, Surah. So we have what do we know about this surah? Well, we know that Rasulullah ﷺ advised that you read this every Friday, or certainly the first 3 verses, in another the first 11 verses of it, but the whole surah would be even more appropriate. And he says that this is one way of avoiding the traps of the Dajjal. Dajjal is from Dajjala, which means to deceive. Dajjal is the one who is always deceiving, the deceiver, okay, the super deceiver actually, the super deceiver, and that could be the superhumans, the super heroes. This our Western society is famous for superheroes and super deceivers. All right, and how do you? What are going to be his main tools of deceiving you? How is he going to deceive you? And inshallah, if we read this surah and reflect on it, you will see that the deceiver has his 5 main ways of deceiving and tempting us all the time. And so here we have 5 stories actually on those 5 ways of the deceptions of the shaitan. And the Quran uses stories. It doesn't lay down, here are the 5 strategies you use. Okay, the Quran doesn't use that mode. Okay, nowadays I know in our modern, so we use that 5-point strategy or 4-point strategy. It's very common. But the Quran uses stories, and stories are very powerful. They are metaphors actually. They're long metaphors. Stories are themselves long metaphors, and it gives you opportunity to really look at feelings, emotions, and very deep aspects of human life. That's what stories do. You can actually delve into the stories. You can look at the characters in the story. and really begin to feel and experience it. So that's why stories are so important, and the Quran tells us these 5 stories. So the first story is the story of the sleepers in the cave. This is about the young men of faith who are very serious. And so this story is also found in the some of the Christian writings, not in the Bible, it's not in the New Testament, but it's in some of the old Christian writings, and they talk about the possibly around 3rd or the 4th century after Christ alayhi salam. So just about 400 years before Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you find traces of this story already about the sleepers, and the Quran tells that story. Okay, and when the Quran tells the stories, people ask me, who's it about? There's not a single name is mentioned, no place is mentioned, no date is given. Subhanallah. And this is another unique feature of Quranic stories. The Quran actually doesn't talk about people, as such, as individuals or names. Very rarely it does. There are few, very few. Only one Sahabi is mentioned out of 124,000. Only 25 prophets are mentioned out of 124,000. You can see how already the Quran is talking about the general human beings, the human condition, and it's trying not to focus on individual names. All right, so this is really important. And unlike the Bible is completely the opposite. It's full of names, and not only just names, but it will give you 100 of their ancestors' names as well. Seriously, there is an occasion where there are 2 pages of just names of the ancestor of somebody's genealogy, and you wonder, why do I want to know that? Okay, but the Quran is, in many ways, I can really call it a minimalist. What is it? Well, that's a fault, is it? No, it isn't. In modern age, that is actually who gets more paid more? The journalist for Sun or for Times? Who gets paid more? No, not the Times. It's the Sun, because he's got to make it simple. He's got to make it for everybody. The Times can have he's given you can write 800 words, but the Mirror or Sun, no, 150 words. So he has to be minimalist. And how do you get your, we just had a film made for our Quran, and he did 5 minutes, and then we asked him, can you make a 30-second one? And he charged us £5,000 first, and then he said, for 30 seconds, we thought, that would be, we went down on that basis. Well, this is this is 1/10, so this should only be, something like £500. But he said, no, this is going to be even more, because, we will have to do a lot of hard work trying to really squeeze it down to, we will have to spend, 3-4 times more time actually thinking about how we edit it down to 30 seconds. So it's, being a minimalist actually is a great skill, isn't it? It really is. It's it's an amazing skill. Deletions is what happens, and that is really a great skill. What you need to delete, and the Quran does a lot of that. It's just amazing, and that's what makes it so and captivating, and also appropriate for our age. We're short of time, aren't we? We only have bite size. We can only do little things. So the Quran is absolutely, to be honest, to the point. It's very pithy, terse, and this is, people who are used to reading novels, 500-page novels about one nutter having a nutty and stupid life. For them, it's amazing. It just puts it down to 5 lines, okay, rather than 500 pages. So it's a different type of a mindset, but it leaves room for reflections and thinking. That is what I think the Quran means when it says, أَفَلَا تَتَفَكَّرُونَ, don't you reflect? أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, don't you reason and understand? Meaning it expects you to do that meditation. And, your Sheikh is constantly asking you to be meditative, isn't he? What better to meditate than the Quran? Seriously, eh? So, inshallah, you will enjoy it, when you start doing that. So, Surat al-Qaf, is very brief and short, and each story in it is, again, very short. It leaves out all the names. That's what I was trying to get to you. So don't get worried, the Quran doesn't... Why do you want to know? And if you did know, so what? They were from there and there. This is their names. What difference would it make? It would only complicate. But the Quran says, no, listen, look at the story and learn the lesson from it. We want you to learn the lesson that... What is the lesson we want you to learn? Well, first of all, how you need to be mujahid, how you need to be standing up to the authorities that abuse your rights and your freedom of speech and your freedom of religion. How you need to be able to stand up to such tyrants and oppressors. First of all, you need to learn about that. And you need to be brave and courageous about that I will never compromise my faith. Okay, that's a very powerful lesson that comes from these wonderful young men, who run away from their city life, from their homes, in order to save their faith. And then they're in a jamaat as well. It's not just 2 of them, 3 of them, 4 of them. They're in a, telling us already that, if you want to come to Allah, come with a group, okay? And then, in fact, at the end of this, telling this story, the Quran actually does say to the Prophet, وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ وَالْعَشِيِّ يُرِيدُونَ وَجْهَهُ. Keep yourself with those who remember their Lord mornings and evenings, okay? And don't turn your eyes away from them, okay? Don't move your eyes even. In other words, they should be always with you. You should be seeing them always. You should be seeing them always, okay? Seeing them is meeting, isn't it? Okay? Meeting them, with them all the time. And that's a commentary on this story. And in fact, there's few of the verses that are commentary. And that's another interesting. Those are like buffers. For me, they told me where the story begins and ends. Okay, so if you want to really find out how it works, so the story is told, then there is a commentary of several verses, like buffers between the next story, as though the Quran is already commenting, doing the commentary, and encouraging us. This is sunnatullah, to do commentary. So doing tafsir and commentary is the sunnatullah as well. So you need to do your own, tafsir of it. So these young men who go and hide in this cave, Allah puts them to sleep. And here now Allah is telling us that 300 years later, He brings them back to life. And now, what happens? They're brought back to life. And, one of them is sent to go and get food. And when he brings out his 300-year-old coin to pay for his bread,
Just mention what you said, just for a person like me, mention the message and the commentary, so I can, when I go home, I can have an example. So the verse which you said, the Quran gives the commentary. So read it.
Great. Hajisab, you want details, don't you? Okay, you'll have them. All right, so here it is. Okay, after telling this whole story, the comments begin from here, Ajsab. After finishing the story, what happened to them and how Allah brought them back to life, and how then the people of the cave, they began to, the people who discovered them, and by now they were Christians, okay, they had become Christians. Constantine had become a Christian, the emperor. So they were well received and honored, and they decided to build a mosque over their graves and to honor them in that way. So what happens here? So after telling us that, okay, so it's from verse 27 when Allah says, وَاتْلُ مَا أُوحِيَ إِلَيْكَ مِنْ كِتَابِ رَبِّكَ لَا مُبَدِّلَ لِكَلِمَاتِهِ وَلَنْ تَجِدَ مِنْ دُونِهِ مُلْتَحَدًا. So here Allah says that, and recite what is revealed to you from your Lord's book. None can change His words, nor can you find beside Him a place of refuge. And then keep company of the righteous. وَاصْبِرْ نَفْسَكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ يَدْعُونَ رَبَّهُمْ بِالْغَدَاةِ. Okay, and it goes on, actually the commentary continues, where Allah says, وَقُلِ الْحَقُّ مِنْ رَبِّكُمْ فَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيُؤْمِنْ وَمَنْ شَاءَ فَلْيَكْفُرْ. So say the truth is from your Lord, okay, and so whoever wants to believe, let him do so. Whoever wants to believe, let him do so. So this is the freedom, that Allah, the majestic Lord, the powerful Lord, is giving to human beings, okay, unreservedly. Let's be honest. Allah says, come on, you can believe or not believe. I want to see your genuine choice, your own sincere choice. Okay, you make the choice, yeah, no? Whoever wants to believe is allowed to believe, and whoever wishes to deny, let him do so. We have prepared for the evildoers a fire, its walls will surround them. When they plead for water, they will be relieved with boiling water, hotter than the molten brass that will burn their faces, a dreadful drink and an unbearable place of rest. You might wonder, this is really interesting, because how can water boil at higher temperature than the brass? The brass would boil at something like 900 degrees. So how would the water boil at more than 900 degrees? Subhanallah. This might be because the pressure in the Jannah, in Jahannam will be lower, and when the pressure is lower, the water will boil at much, much higher. Or is it the other way around? Who's a physicist here? Which way would it be? If the pressure is high, it would boil at higher, wouldn't it? No, it would be actually the other way around.
If the pressure is low,
it would boil at
high temperature.
Yes, okay, so they would be in the dungeons of hell, which is right down. So the pressure would be very low. So it would be at a higher temperature for them. Okay. Anyway, I don't want to go into the physics. So some physicists will tell you. Anyway, on the other hand, those who believed and did righteous deed, we will not waste the reward of those who did good work. They will have everlasting gardens with streams running beneath them. Here they will be wearing golden bracelets, green dresses with silk embroidery and rich pattern. They will be sitting on couches. What a wonderful reward, an amazing resting place. Okay, now that is the commentary on this. And then it begins the next story, which is وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ
Verse 27 to
31. This is the Quran's commentary on the Surat al-Kahf. And then it begins, وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلَ الرَّجُلَيْنِ. Now tell them the story of the rich man, okay, and the poor man. Okay, the story then begins of this. Is everybody familiar with that story, or do you want me to take you through that story? Shall I take you through the story? Okay. And, okay, so this is another amongst the temptations of the shaitan and the deceptions of the super deceiver. Tell them the parable of two men. The وَضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا, masal, parable, a story, and it's actually a parable, in English, is a story. So don't get confused, when we use these words, parable. It's a story which has a moral lesson. All right, end of this, okay? And I had to use, if I didn't use parable and if I used a story, people would be criticizing, it's just too simplifying and is dumbing it down. And okay, so I didn't want to do that either, because it is, after all, the Majestic Qur'an. So I had to keep some of the terms of the English language as well. So, so I kept the word parable there. But it's really a story. That's what it is. It's still, end of the day, a story, okay, with a moral lesson to it. Tell them the parable of the two men. To one we gave 2 vineyards, hedged by palm trees, with a cornfield lying in the middle. Both vineyards had a stream running between them, so they produced an abundant crop throughout the year. He had plenty of agricultural produce. One day, he said to his friend, as they were arguing among themselves. He said to his friend, as they were? Okay. What is that already telling you? That this friend of his is obviously they're friends, they're familiar with one another, okay? And he says to him, listen, I have more wealth and a larger family than you. Eh? How would you feel like that if Zafar turned to you and said to his wonderful friend Gulfam Jana, I've got more wealth than you, eh? I've got a bigger family than you. What is that? Yes, it's really trying to belittle others, isn't it? And saying, look how big I am, eh? And who does that nowadays? I hope I don't need to mention his name, Jan. I think I have more power and wealth. I'll sort you out, and you will never exist after this, eh? So, auzubillah. It's the mentality of the arrogant person, and the Quran is warning us. This is the wrong way of thinking. He walked into his garden with these wrong thoughts and said, I don't think that this these vineyards of mine will ever perish, nor do I think that judgment day will come. Can you see the Quran is going into his head and revealing what is in his? Well, if he said those words, is it strange that he would be thinking like that? It's obvious, isn't it? He's thinking like that. So the Quran is bringing what's in his mind as well. Okay, I hope you can see at what level the Quran is going. It's taking his words and then saying, well, his thinking is also like this. Okay, and that's true, isn't it? You know, your behavior is determined by your attitude. Your attitude is then determined by the values you have, the virtues you live by, the belief system you have, the world vision you have, or the world view you have. That determines your attitude. That then determines your behavior. That's a very straightforward, stimulus response cycle that Professor Muhammad was yesterday talking about. Isn't that right? So, nor do I think that judgment day will come. Even if I was returned to my Lord, I will certainly go to somewhere better than this. Can you see the confused thinking here? He says, even if there is God, and I am denying and I am being disobedient and rebellious to him, I'll be okay. Can you see how confused the guy is? Totally disoriented, and his thinking is perverted, as though the Quran is telling us that, when you become like that, arrogant, your thinking goes completely off the track. You can never. And this is why arrogance and big-headedness is so deleterious and disastrous. This is what Bush did. This is what Blair did. You don't like politics. I don't like politics, but, I have to speak the truth, and I don't sometimes care who it is for. But when we had 3 million people marching, I was in one of that 3 million who marched against the war. And it shows you what happens when you become arrogant and when you give too much power to your leaders. Nobody could stop him, and nobody could stop Bush either, because this is sadly the poor nature of democracy, and the downside of it as well. It's got positive things, but it's got downside to it, and that is where. But it's more about actually the mindset. I wanted to reflect arrogance. Why does West behave like this towards others? It's obvious why. Just like this guy is saying, I'm so wealthy and powerful, I'm big, I can beat you, and what can you do anyway? I'll come and destroy you. What can you do? But of course, the Quran tells us another very important principle. The principle is this. When you do evil, the Quran tells us, there's many places, it actually says, when you do evil, your evil tags on you. Your evil tracks you. You are tagged. You are tagged. You are tracked. And I use that word in some places. That's a really proper translation of it. The Quran says, you are going to be tagged. The evil you do, are you going to be tagged by it? You are not going to escape. You will have to pay penalty for it, here and in the hereafter as well. So, yes, anybody who does evil cannot escape it. And America has done a lot of evil in the world, and it's actually paying a very, very heavy price at every level. Every level it's paying it. Those poor soldiers, when they come back, post-traumatic stress is killing them and murdering them, and suicide is happening. Families are broken. And, the society is absolutely broken. And same here, So we cannot escape. The lana and the curse follows you when you do evil. You might think, I can get away for a while. You might do for a while. But evil begets evil, the Quran says. In ahsantum li anfusikum. When you do good, you do it for yourself. Wa in asatum falaha. When you do evil, falaha. It's on your head now. You're not going to get away. You're not going to get away with anything, So this is the mindset. Can you see the mindset the Quran is creating? Subhanallah. What kind of mindset is it creating? A pure mindset. One that is always wanting the best for the others. The best for the Wallah, that is amazing kind of mindset. In fact, the whole thing is, it's trying to say, well, modern society and modern education system and our modern society is actually saying, no, you put yourself at the center. You are the center of the world. Have you seen these little kiddies, some of, and how mum and dad make them the center of the universe? And what happens? Of course, that individualism and selfishness grows and grows. And when they're old, what will they be? Well, if you want to see what happens to the graduates of Harvard, Yale, Oxford and Cambridge, and what wonderful things they do. Well, look at the financial crisis of 2008. Sorry, we've got an economist here, and I might. So, who was that? A product of which great minds produced the crisis of 2008? Would it not be true to say that it was those great young men who were working in the finance houses in London, in New York? Professor Ishfaq, isn't that true? They were the most brightest people, the creme de la creme, earning something like $250,000. I had one of my students, sadly, he fell into that trap, and he graduated from Oxford and then worked. Of course, he burnt himself within a year or two. You completely burn yourself. You work 18 hours. Okay, you get $250,000 in a year, but you completely burn yourself. What were they doing? They were coming up with these, hedge fund this, weird and wonderful, powerful names to these products. I don't know their names. Dr. Ishfaq can tell us those names of the products they create, the products which make millions and billions. But then did what? Ruined the lives of millions of poor people, took away their homes, made them dispossessed, didn't it? That was a product of what? Those wonderful minds from Oxford, from Cambridge, the brightest people. Seriously, they were the brightest people. What did they lack? Yeah, they had no sense of kindness. In fact, they didn't have a sense of justice either. No sense of, my goodness, generosity is far away. They didn't have humanity left in them. When they were making up these products worth billions, they never thought, well, I'm sure they had it. There were people who were talking about this is really this isn't right. But still they went ahead with it and destroyed. I'm just giving you, do you see what I'm giving you an example that when you put yourself at the center of things, no matter how intelligent you are, you're going to destroy others. You're going to destroy yourself as well. Okay, you're going to burn yourself and you burn others. I hope you can see the philosophy of the Quran, how the Quran is and its comments. So it tells us this story of the rich man and the... Okay. No. So he says, can you see his confused thinking? He says, even if I was to go back to, if there was a God and I was to be taken to, I would go to paradise. Okay, I'll go to paradise. So the next is the wisdom of the humble man. But his friend said to him, as they argued, how can you deny the one who created you from dust and then from a drop of sperm? For me, he is Allah, my Lord, and I do not associate anyone with my Lord. When you entered your... So this friend of his, who's a poor man, but it looks as though he's very familiar with him, so he can argue with him as a friend. But he tells him, I believe in Tawheed. Okay, so inshallah we'll be finishing. Let's just finish this story off and you can reflect on it. When you entered your vineyard, why didn't you say, there is no power except that of Allah? Even if you saw that I was less than you in wealth and number of children, but I am hopeful that my Lord will give me better than your vineyards. He could send a thunderbolt from the sky on them and turn the land barren, or make its water sink deep into the ground so that you wouldn't be able to reach it. So then, what happens? As though he's predicting. He is? If this is what he's predicting, that a thunderbolt will come and destroy your vineyard, okay, so thunderbolt, this is like a hurricane, but within it has very hot air that can actually scorch and burn. Okay, so it would create a fire in the vineyard, and that's what happens. Okay, so this thunderbolt comes, and so his fruits were destroyed. There he was, wringing his hands, regretting what he had spent on it. The trellises had fallen. He sobbed, I wish I had never associated anyone with my Lord. There was no army that could help him against Allah, nor could he defend himself. This shows all power belongs to Allah, the truth. The belief in Him produces the best reward and the best outcome. So that's the story of the rich man and the poor. And of course, what are the lessons in that? Inshallah, after your short break, I hope you can tell me what are the lessons, and what were the temptations here that the Quran is warning us about. So inshallah, we'll continue after our short break there. No?
Inshallah, if we can break now and be back here at 4:05, please. So that will take us to the end of the session till 4:15, inshallah. So 4:05.